The Energy and Water Development Subcommittee hearing is now open. Welcome, everyone. I want to especially welcome Secretary Jennifer Granholm to the Energy and Water Subcommittee this morning to discuss the fiscal year 2025 budget request for the Department of Energy. But before I do that, Madam Secretary, and to my distinguished ranking member, Ms. Capter, and to the staff, I want to thank you for the job that we all did, our subcommittee, the Senate, the administration, yourself, to put together the fiscal 2024 bill that we just recently passed in a tranche of 6 bills. Let's face it, we serve in very arduous times. There are very strong ideas on both sides and different avocations, but to put together the energy and water bill that we did for the people of this great nation was no small task, and I thank you and everyone involved with that. Having said that, we move forward with 2025. Madam Secretary, thank you again for being here. I want to address the 2025 issues, but as you know, one of my strongest priorities in Congress has been, for years, nuclear energy. All aspects of nuclear energy, the front end of the fuel cycle, the back end of the fuel cycle, and all that it entails. And of course, in 2024, we've worked very hard to preserve the Generation 3 projects, which was very good with $900 million. HALEU, we worked together to get $2.7 billion in the budget so that we can have a domestic American HALEU project, which we will need for our advanced Gen 4 reactors. So again, large areas of agreement in that realm, and we got that done. And it's in that spirit that I hope we can continue in fiscal 2025. The Department of Energy's fiscal 2025 budget request is approximately $52 billion. It's an increase of $1.8 billion above fiscal 2024. I strongly support many of the programs and activities of the Department of Energy. For example, our nation's strategic defense rests on a strong nuclear deterrent. So I was pleased to see that the budget request proposes an increased funding for the National Nuclear Security Administration, the NNSA. The request would continue funding the uranium processing facility in my home district in East Tennessee, as well as plutonium pit production, ongoing life extension programs, the Sea Launch Cruise Missile nuclear, and a new variant of the B-61 gravity bomb. And I thank you for that. We will work with the administration today and over the coming weeks to determine whether the request represents sufficient funding and the appropriate prioritization for the continued modernization of our nuclear weapons complex. Another high priority for me is the Office of Science. I worked hard to secure increased funding in the Fiscal 24 Act, one of the few non-defense increases across the department. A strong Office of Science is critical, in my view, to America's role as the global leader of scientific discovery. Madam Secretary, I look forward to discussing with you today how the request addresses activities related to fusion energy and isotopes in particular. Unfortunately, I also have concerns with some of the Biden administration's priorities expressed in the fiscal 2025 budget request through other actions of the department. The Department of Energy is sitting on tens of billions of unobligated dollars intended to advance a variety of energy technologies. Yet rather than focusing on the effective implementation of those existing programs, the budget again proposes many new programs, including, in my view, disproportionate and unsustainable increases for energy efficiency and renewable energy activities. The administration, again, has highlighted clean energy and climate change goals as key drivers of the budget request. Nuclear energy, a baseload carbon-free source of electricity, will be, in my view, essential in achieving any climate change goals. Yet, the nuclear energy program is one of the only cuts proposed in the budget request. Especially concerning is that the request includes no funding for the 2 ongoing advanced reactor demonstration projects, which we feel have gone very well. We know these projects will need additional funding, and it would be better to continue incremental funding each year for these projects, in our view. Some of the department's actions also raise concerns about energy security for America and for our allies. Numerous energy efficiency standards have been proposed, in my view, at such extreme levels as to significantly increase prices for consumers and cause supply concern. I was pleased to see the department backtrack on the gas stoves rule, and I hope to see similar adjustment to reality on the distribution, transformers, and manufacturing housing rules. As the Secretary knows, I've been a long-term proponent of the manufacturing housing industry. This is the beginning of the American dream for many lower-income Americans, and we want to make sure that is there. The department's recent pause on reviewing pending LNG export applications is also a serious concern. I hope we will have the chance to discuss some of these actions in more detail. Once again, Secretary Granholm, I appreciate you being here today to explain your budget request. I look forward to working together with you and my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to move forward a budget that will strengthen our national security and advance our energy independence. Please ensure for us that the hearing record, questions for the record, and any supporting information requested by the subcommittee are delivered to us in final form to us no later than 4 weeks from the time you receive them. Members who have additional questions for the record will have the close of business Monday to provide them to the subcommittee office. Before I turn to my ranking member, I do want to say this. Again, I thank you. I look forward to working with you. I will say this. Right now, there are ongoing other subcommittee hearings. So members will come and go. Defense, Labor, Education, Health, and Human Services. So members will be moving in and out. So I did want to let you know that. With that, my ranking member, Marcy Kaptur, from the great state of Ohio, we have worked together very closely for years. We are neighbors in this building. And I would say this for those, Ms. Kaptur has the high distinction of being the longest-serving female member in the United States House in history. With that, I yield to my friend, Ranking Member Kaptur, and I thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Fleischman, very, very much. It's a pleasure to work with you and with our very talented members on both sides of the aisle. We like to say that we're kind of a template for how to find the big middle and move bills. And I appreciate working with you very, very much to develop and pass our bipartisan fiscal year 2024 bill. And we want to thank the Secretary for all of her efforts and that of her department specialists to make that a reality. One of the first ones after a very long delay that moved forward. I truly hope that we can continue in our subcommittee's bipartisan, button-down, working partnership for fiscal year 2025 to benefit the people of our nation and our future. Thank you, Secretary Granholm, for joining us today, and we are so grateful for your exemplary service and leadership on these energy and water issues vital to every region of this country and our world. Today, we are here to discuss the Department of Energy's fiscal year 2025 budget request. Energy security is national security. And since World War II, America paid a terrible price for its unconscious slide into foreign dependency on imported energy. To date, our nation's path toward U.S. energy independence in perpetuity is clear, is steady, and successful. But we're not finished yet. Putin's unprovoked war against Ukraine clearly highlights the importance of energy security. Russian manipulation of oil markets and the sharp escalation in geopolitical risk in the Middle East has oil markets on edge. Never again should America depend on foreign adversaries to fuel our cars and power our homes. 44 years ago, as our nation's economy tanked due to the first Arab oil embargo, President Carter and my predecessor in Congress, particularly Thomas Ludlow Ashley of Toledo, Ohio, God rest his soul, as a member of this Congress and heading the special committee that was formed back then by Speaker Tip O'Neill. They created the U.S. Department of Energy. They did it on a bipartisan basis for the benefit of the country. With their vision and steadfast bipartisan commitment, our nation has made progress in attaining energy independence. Over the last 40 years, I often feel like we're at a mountain and we've just come over the top and we're starting to see the sun again. We're starting to see it. Our nation over the last 40 years has made remarkable progress through the expansion of domestic oil and gas production and developing new, cheaper, clean energy sources such as biofuels, solar, thermal recovery, pushing into new energy frontiers of fusion, advanced hydrogen, and energy storage, and the chair well knows how difficult but steady this process has been. U.S. petroleum imports peaked in 2005, and for the last 4 years, the United States was a petroleum net exporter. In fact, for the past 6 years in a row, the United States produced more crude oil than any nation at any time in history. Natural gas exports from the United States reached a record high in the first half of 2023. Last year marks the third consecutive year in which the United States supplied more liquefied natural gas to Europe than any other country. Last year, overall biofuels production capacity reached a record level, with fuel ethanol representing 79% of that capacity. That is a win for farmers and for having an alternative source of energy. And I can still remember when Senator Tom Harkin of Iowa and I produced the first legislation to create that market, and the Department of Agriculture didn't want it. We said, we have forestry, we have fiber, we have farming. What about fuel? And they didn't want it. Now you couldn't take it away from them. However, for sustained U.S. energy security, our nation must pursue an all-of-the-above energy strategy. We must also invest in clean energy to diversify our energy portfolio. Clean energy technologies and conservation and thermal heat recovery, we have to embed that in people's thinking, will lower costs for consumers. Building materials, new types of building materials will make a huge difference, creating good-paying jobs and help address the climate crisis. We know this approach works. Over the last 12 years, the Department of Energy's investments have driven down the cost of clean energy. Onshore wind costs have dropped 69%. Solar photovoltaic costs have dropped 89%. And multi-layer solar technologies become more powerful and advanced every day. Energy drives our private sector's ability to flourish in a modern economy. Millions of living wage jobs attend to energy production, conservation, and the skills of a workforce working 24/7 to power our nation. Imaginative energy technologies are being created by America's amazing inventors, and I've met many of these folks, in building materials, solar and electrified windows. How about that? Biofuels, advanced nuclear, fusion, hydrogen, geothermal, and thermal heat recovery, and offshore wind and wave energy, to name a few. This year, the movie Oppenheimer won the Academy Award. And that is the world in which our subcommittee lives and works. Our subcommittee on both sides of the aisle, and I know our chairman, knows how important it is that we continue to support the Department of Energy's balanced portfolio of transformative investments, including energy efficiency and renewable energy, to develop clean, affordable, advanced, and secure American energy. In other parts of the Department of Energy's budget, the National Security Administration, which the chair has referenced fully, assures our nation's nuclear security assets, including the excellence, and I mean excellence, of our nuclear navy around the globe, and they don't get enough credit for all they do. They are modern and ready, acting as both a deterrent and a safeguard for our nation's security. With Vladimir Putin's recent reckless threats about launching nuclear weapons and former President Donald Trump's appeasing reaction, we must maintain strategic investments as an affirmation of American will to protect and defend our people and our allies and assure our nation's security. However, given the evolving nuclear security landscape, I am concerned with proposed cuts to nuclear nonproliferation programs. These investments are crucial to enhancing our nation's ability to prevent adversaries from acquiring nuclear weapons and to respond to nuclear or radiological incidents and accidents domestically and abroad. With that, I'll close my remarks and thank our colleagues on both sides of the aisle for their attendance today, and I look forward to discussing this request in more detail. Thank you, Chairman Fleischman, very much.
Again, thank you, Ranking Member Capter. Secretary Granholm, thank you again for being here today. Without objection, your full written testimony will be entered into the record. With that in mind, we would respectfully ask that you summarize your opening statement in 5 minutes.
You bet. Thank you so much, Chairman Fleischman, Ranking Member Capter, and members of the subcommittee. I'm honored to be here with you today to discuss President Biden's latest budget request for the Department of Energy. So 3 years ago, I joined this administration believing that if we came together around a national energy strategy, that we could restore manufacturing, we could create jobs, we could address the climate crisis, and we could lead the world in clean energy. And today, we are doing just that. America is back. Thanks to Congress's efforts and the President's vision, we're executing a focused, deliberate strategy that positions us to become energy independent and energy secure. This strategy positions our businesses to dominate, our workers to compete, and our communities to thrive, and it is already working. Since the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law, the first of the three bills that really have transformed our economic landscape, companies in this clean energy space have announced 600 new or expanded manufacturing plants on U.S. soil, $200 billion in planned investment for batteries, for electric vehicles, for solar, for wind, for nuclear, and more. Tens of thousands of jobs being created from Tennessee to Toledo, from Nevada to New York, and everywhere in between, thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act. Sustaining that kind of growth, though, requires us to complement the historic funding with durable long-term investments. So let me thank all of you for your work on fiscal year 24 budget. Mr. Chairman, you referenced this, but I cannot tell you how much we appreciate the work of you, of this committee, for including $2.7 billion for domestic uranium production, as well as the small modular reactors, as well as nuclear safety worker training. All of that in that budget is so very important. So the President's fiscal year 25 will build upon those successes in 24. Our commercialization tools are giving American businesses the confidence to capitalize on this moment while deepening our energy security. But deepening energy security is an ongoing project, and we need to fund it year over year, and that's why the budget calls for significant appropriations for our demonstration and deployment programs, including our Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains and our Grid Deployment Office. We're also making sure every community can benefit from reliable, affordable energy and efficiency technologies. DOE does this, for example, through our Weatherization Assistance Program, which Congress granted transformational funding in the bipartisan infrastructure law. I have seen firsthand how this program changes lives, as well as the overwhelming need for it. This budget will bring us closer to meeting that need for 40,000 additional low-income households. It also includes dedicated funding for our interagency working group on coal and power plant communities. I've also seen firsthand how that program gives communities the gift of rebirth, and it instills pride for the workers who have defined America's energy past and will help to power its future. And it's not just energy workers. After decades of disinvestment, we're finally rebuilding our manufacturing base, and we're developing the skilled workforce needed to power it. We're also planning for the future by doubling down on R&D with an $8.6 billion request for basic science research and $3 billion for applied R&D. We're making sure that each new generation of energy technologies is more innovative than the last, from industrial decarbonization solutions to fusion. We're also requesting $2 billion for critical and emerging technologies like AI and quantum. Both are key to economic competitiveness and defense, and DOE is uniquely positioned to drive them forward. The budget also includes a $25 billion for our National Nuclear Security Administration. Russia's continued war in Ukraine makes nuclear deterrent paramount to our national defense and the security of our allies. The President's request would give the NNSA the means to deliver and adapt in the face of evolving threats and would advance the NNSA's wider priorities around arms control and nonproliferation, counterterrorism, and the safe use of civil nuclear power. Thanks to the bipartisan assistance we've received from Congress, America is back. We are the envy of the world. We can't afford to lose momentum, and that depends on your continued support. I look forward to address you today. Thank you for the opportunity, and let's answer some questions.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. My first question is going to be directed to you about the uranium processing facility, the UPF, which is we did actually the groundbreaking for that several years ago in Oak Ridge. Madam Secretary, last year I asked you about the schedule and costs associated with recapitalization of UPF. As you know, the current facilities, Y-12, are more than 70 years old, dating back to the Manhattan Project. Respectfully, we still have not seen an updated schedule. Three questions, if I may. Can you share an updated schedule and cost estimated for UPF? If not, when does the department intend to have a new baseline for UPF? Second question, please. Do you anticipate any scope being taken out of the UPF project as part of the rebaselining? And thirdly, the fiscal 2025 budget includes $800 million for the project. Is the project request, in your view, adequate to ensure the project gets back on track?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, by the way, for the $50 million increase in this particular line in 2024. So the baseline change proposal for the UPF cost is underway. It's nearing completion, but the numbers for the cost and the schedule are not yet finalized. Scope has not been removed from the baseline change proposal, and acknowledging that the Y-12 building 9212 is old, but we also want to keep this on track. So we will continue to invest in maintaining the old facilities and pre-producing some weapon components in Y-12 to mitigate the risks associated with potential delays to UPF. We want to not have that happen. So we think we're on track, and those estimates will be coming to you soon.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to address HALEU and advanced reactors. You alluded to that in your opening statement. I thank you. In fiscal 2024, that $2.7 billion was great. We provided in fiscal 2024 significant funding for small modular reactor deployment and the advanced reactors demonstration program. I also made sure we funded, again, $2.7 billion for HALEU needed for a Generation 4 advanced reactors. I want to make sure that those programs are on a path to success, and I'd like you to work with me as those programs move forward. Today, can you please tell us, when can we expect to see a detailed resource-loaded plan with programmatic milestones for domestic uranium enrichment? What is the current budget and schedule profile for each of the two advanced reactor demonstration projects? What steps will the department take to ensure the projects continue to progress? And then finally, given the department's expertise and longstanding support for SMR, when can we expect the RFP for new competition? And I thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, again, thank you so much for the investment from 24. I will say that the 2024 appropriations bill specifies that DOE cannot repurpose the CNC funds, which were used for the HALU, until a law is enacted to ban those supplies from Russia. And so I strongly hope and encourage that Congress does that so that we can move with alacrity. I know this bill just came out 2 weeks ago, so we are working on getting you the schedules. I know you've been briefed on it, and we will be moving apace. Hopefully we can get that ban in place in order to unlock the CNC. With respect to the ARDP work, we know that those as well are being rebaselined. They are have come in over budget, and so we're working with the recipients on their rebaselining and with their schedules, with the fundamental goal, of course, of ensuring that the program is successful and to be able to take advanced nuclear to the marketplace. We support those projects. And with respect to the small modular reactors, the demonstration money is going through our Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, which is the big demonstration arm of the Department of Energy. We're going to implement a competitive process to do this. We're working closely with our Office of Nuclear Energy as well to make sure that the funds are deployed in a way that is complementary, and we know time is of the essence, and we're prepared to move quickly to implement that program as well.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And one small point of order, appreciate your answers to our questions. You accurately reflected what is in the legislation in regard to the HALU, but I also believe part of that law is also that administrative action can also be taken, which may entail even the potential for an executive order to address that.
That is true. That is possible. We're concerned about the enduring nature of it, and so if Congress acts on it, it obviously solidifies it more concretely, so to the extent that Congress could do that. I know it's in one of the bills that started in the House, and hopefully we can see that happen.
Thank you. Ranking Member Caput.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, I can't thank you enough for stressing the connection between energy and job growth and economic opportunity in this country. I think you're probably the first secretary that's ever said that. And coming from a part of the country that's had so many jobs outsourced, I appreciate that you can see it. And I just wanted to mention that in the field of controlled environmental agriculture, the bottom line, as we return fruit and vegetable production to this country, energy becomes the critical factor. In these large houses now that are being built, 40% of the bottom line is energy. We simply must solve this scientific challenge to reduce that cost to producers, and we will feed the world. So I know you know what I'm talking about in that regard. It is a technical challenge, and we need to be successful in meeting it. On the industrial side, Ford Motor brought back heavy truck from Mexico many years ago to our region, and I said to the CEO, I said, what can I do to keep these jobs here? He said, reduce my energy costs 30%. I thought, how am I going to do that? So thank you for seeing the connection. My first question is, DOE is charged with promulgating congressionally mandated energy efficiency standards for appliances and equipment, and I'm concerned that your proposed rule for distribution transformers will adversely impact domestic steel production and our national security. Cleveland-Cliffs, which is helping America's steel industry rise again under terrible international competition. It is our country's largest flat-rolled steel producer and only producer of grain-oriented electrical steel for power and distribution transformers. They've indicated they will close their Butler, Pennsylvania, and Zanesville, Ohio electrical and steel operations if the rule is finalized as proposed. This would be tragic for the over 1,300 union workers and undermine domestic supply chains again, not only for grain-oriented electrical steel, but for non-oriented electrical steel, which is essential for EV production. Could you commit today to work with stakeholders to make sure the final rule does not adversely impact domestic production, or GOES and NOES as they call them, and preserves the use of GOES for distribution transformers?
Thank you. Yes, we have been hearing and taking in a lot of feedback, working with industry, working with UAW, et cetera, who have weighed in on the proposed rule. Adjustments have been made. The final proposed rule is now in the interagency and will come out before June, which is what's required by the consent decree that we are under. It's one of the beauties of being able to do proposed rules and getting that input. That is our feedback loop, and we have heard, and adjustments have been made.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Good luck on that. Keep pushing. Secretary Granholm, the Department of Energy has tremendous capability at its research labs to develop new technology to address the needs of the agriculture sector. How can the Department of Energy partner with other agencies to develop sensor technology that will allow for the in situ real-time monitoring of nutrients and pollutants that contribute to harmful algal blooms, certainly in the western basin of Lake Erie, throughout the Great Lakes, the Everglades, and so many other places across our country?
Yeah, we're happy to work with you on this. I know a number of our labs obviously are focused on the bioeconomy and on ways to enhance agricultural output, efficiency, et cetera. So eager to follow up with you on the specifics that you're asking about. But we've got a whole slew of labs that are focused on making sure that they are working with agriculture and the bioeconomy to ensure that it continues to produce at home, and that it's efficient.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate that openness. And finally, on this first round, on domestic solar manufacturing, in my home state, First Solar manufactures thin film solar modules, as you well know, and it's the only U.S. headquartered company in the world, in the world's top 10 module producers. In 2024, over 50% of new U.S. power generation was solar. How about that? And yet we are ceding the market to China. Over 1.5 years' worth of solar module demand is currently sitting in warehouses, according to the International Energy Agency, and the market for building new facilities is dire. We are at a make-or-break inflection point when it comes to reshoring end-to-end solar manufacturing supply chains. Is the Department of Energy working with the Department of Treasury to ensure that the Inflation Reduction Act policies incentivize domestic manufacturing through the solar supply chains? And do you have any options to help directly in the critical areas of wafer and polysilicon production? And then finally, the department, through the Federal Energy Management Program, recently announced funding for the Department of Defense to make improvements to the Pentagon campus, including installing solar. Can you commit to ensuring that if contractors or third parties install the solar or provide the power, they adhere to the highest standards of domestic content and labor?
Great, thank you for this. The solar story is a really great story in the United States. First Solar, in particular, having backlog now of bookings well into the years ahead. That's great. It's all because of the Inflation Reduction Act and the irresistible incentives that have been embedded there. We had a record year last year of 32.4 gigawatts of solar having been installed in the United States. There is on the demand side, a 30% tax credit for homeowners to be able to install solar. For developers, a similar 30% investment tax credit. And there is a per unit credit, which includes polysilicon and wafers. This also is a huge story for domestic content, because developers who get that solar credit get an extra 10%, so a 40% tax credit if they use domestic solar-produced panels. And this is one of the reasons why our build-out now of solar manufacturing in the United States is so critical. You are so right that China had a very strategic plan to be able to corner the market on solar, and they did. And so what we are doing, we are not ceding anything. We are fighting back to get that manufacturing back in the United States, and it's working.
Thank you. Much success. We want to help you. Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Ms. Capter. At this time, I'd like to recognize my friend, Mr. Garcia of California, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for coming in again. Appreciate you outlining the FY25 and hopefully smoother sailing for that process in the year to come than the last year. I want to go back to the conversation. I want to go back to the conversation that we've had at previous hearings, not just here, but also at SST when you've come and spoke and outlined the vision. You mentioned in your opening remarks that we are the envy of the world right now, and I take issue with that. One, I don't want us to be necessarily the envy of the world. I want us to be secure. And that's what our voters want. That's what our constituents want. They want security. And one of the key cornerstones of our nation's security, national security, is the SPR, our nation's Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We are coming up now on the one-year anniversary where you came in front of us here at ENW and promised a plan to replenish the SPR. And what's concerning about where we are right now and what is not enviable or not, frankly, providing us security from an energy perspective is that you can see we are sitting here at record low SPR levels in our reserves that we haven't seen since 1983, which is when we were first starting to actually ramp up. So it has been a year since you committed to providing a plan. In this committee hearing, it was 6 months ago that you committed to bringing a plan. I have yet to see a plan to replenish the SPR. This is not a 401k chart. If you saw this and this was your 401k, you would be concerned and you would be acting on it. This is not a brokerage account for the federal treasury. This is, if you want to make a metaphor, it's an insurance policy for the United States. If we are not going to achieve 100% energy independence, we need to at least be in a position where we have a strong SPR, refill our coffers, and for rainy days be able to draw on that. You have sold off millions of barrels, 150 million barrels at higher price points. In your last testimony, you said you were waiting for the price to come down below $72, and there's been about 4 months where the price of oil has been below $72 since you made that testimony, and we have not been tapping back into that market to replenish the reserve. So I'm not going to ask you what the plan is here because I don't think you're going to be articulated here, but I think you need to deliver to Congress a plan to replenish the SPR. We are dangerously close to not being not only energy independent, but not having a backup plan or a safety net when it comes to some global crisis around oil. In the span of the last year, oil has been as low as $67 and as high as $93. So I would appreciate if you would treat SPR more like an insurance policy that you are trying to just renew and make sure that this country has, and as a whole, it's comprehensive, it's going to protect us, rather than an E-Trade account where you're coming in and out of the markets in order to either make money or prevent the loss of money, or to try to change the price point of a barrel of oil. I'll leave it at that, but I would like to get you on the record to commit to coming back in front of us with the plan to buy back and refill the SPR.
We do have a plan, and the plan is that we were going to cancel the congressionally mandated sales, $140 million worth, 140 million barrels worth, that we were going to begin to repurchase, and we have. We've now repurchased about 30 million barrels back, and that we were going to accelerate exchanges. So by the end of this year, we will be back to essentially where we would have been had we not sold during the invasion of Ukraine and with Putin's weaponization.
By the end of this year, we will be back up here
to where we would have been, because Congress sold or was going to sell 140 million barrels to solve budget, because part of our strategy was to come in and cancel those sales. So we specifically, that was part of our...
Not to cut you off, but I'm getting short on time. If you have a plan and you're making commitments for the end of the year, what is the number in the SPR that we should expect to see in the end of the year?
It will be what it would have been had we had not sold. What's that number? Which, so we're at about 350 million barrels right now, 358, something like that. I have to look at what the exact number would be.
Maybe staff can help you out while we talk to the other question I have around the nuclear energy, if that's okay, or we can get the answer for the record. We, in FY24, made great strides in terms of the recycling of nuclear waste. We have seen the waste side of nuclear programs be the long pole in the tent in terms of viability, in terms of appetite, in terms of popularity with the American people. And we have put provisions in for interim storage of waste to help mitigate some of those concerns around the waste factors. What is preventing us from going quicker in terms of, rather than doing interim recycling, actually doing more permanent recycling? I'm seeing technologies out there where we actually can take some of the nuclear waste and recycle it with great efficiencies and great recycling percentages in a permanent fashion. And can also the permanent recycling of the fuel be included in the HALEU buildup conversations as well? Is this something that we can maybe get 1 + 1 = 3 in those conversations? But if we are truly seeking the cleanest source of energy, which is nuclear power, small modular reactors, we have to be able to deal with and mitigate the waste side of this equation. And I feel like that technology is there. I just feel like the acquisition side and the government support for that technology is what's lagging. How do we get better in FY25?
Yeah, you may be aware, we've, at our INL National Lab, our Idaho National Lab, they have a project where they're working on looking at the recycling and doing the research associated to make sure that we do it in a way that is responsible and clean and affordable. So we're very interested in this solution and hope to see some progress, some great progress. There's some private sector companies who are working there in a public-private partnership at INL to do that. So eager to do that. I'm not sure about using the HALEU money for that, because we have a desperate need to get that going too for the advanced reactors and the SMRs. But nonetheless, there is not an opposition to it. We're eager to see this happen.
Okay, thank you. I'll time you that.
I want to thank Mr. Garcia, and to further supplement your answers to that question, we did put $20 million for recycling. In my opening remarks, we talked about dealing with the rear end of the fuel cycle and how important that was. The great news, Mr. Garcia, is we've got wonderful American companies, some of them are in the room today, like Curios and others, some large, some small, that actually have American technologies. And I just spoke with Jeff Elias the other day, who was in Japan, head of TBA. So many other nations are reprocessing. Friends and foes, the Russians have done it for years, so I could not agree more with your comments and the urgency for dealing with this. We've got the technology, and we've got the technology to deal with it that deals with the non-proliferation issues. So I do thank you for your
advocacy. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your leadership.
Yes, sir. At this time, I'd like to recognize my friend from Illinois, Mr. Quigley, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning, Madam Secretary.
Good morning.
So I appreciate the success in becoming more energy self-sufficient and renewables and everything else we're doing to provide energy. But obviously, we have to move it around. And that gets to the issues of an already congested electricity grid system. The added demand from the electrification of the transportation industry, growth in the manufacturing, which is a good thing, but all puts additional stress. We're talking about having to expand the existing regional transmission system by 128% to meet these load growth projections. And I see that we've got in the 25 budget proposals for planning, interregional planning and development, increasing from 16 million to 17 million, and other studies like CTAP. But is this all enough? What else must we do, and what are the consequences if we're not going to get there?
Yeah, we basically, as you say, have to more than double the size of the electric grid in order to get to the president's goal of 100% clean electricity. We have to add all that clean power on. But we are also seeing for the first time this increase in demand, which is extremely disconcerting, because we had been flat for a good number of years because of the efficiencies and the technologies that have been developed, a large part by the Department of Energy. But this increase is due to some good news, which is the manufacturing facilities that have announced that they are coming to the U.S., but also AI and data centers. And so I think we have to think differently, number one, about how we power those who are coming with increased demands. And so a lot of the tech companies, for example, are willing to have this conversation about if they're building a data center, maybe they bring the clean power along with it, additive power, and not just taking from the existing grid. In addition, the Department of Energy, we have, thanks to the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act, about $25 billion in various pockets to address the grid issues. And we have put out now, we're in the second round of funding for our Grid Resilience Innovation Program. We are focused on the, yes, planning, important. Clearly, we have to know where the transmission lines should be going, where the need will be, and so we are in the process in that NITSE corridor, the National Infrastructure Corridor for electricity in the United States. People are able to now, or entities are able to nominate which should be part of the new corridors. That's happening right now. We're taking input on that. And in addition, there's all sorts of technology that we are incentivizing the funding of. For example, reconductoring of wires on the existing grid so that we don't have to wait for years for permitting for new, meaning you can get twice the power across a transmission line by using advanced conductoring materials. And part of that is being, we're asking for funding opportunity announcement for those who want to come and do reconductoring. Grid enhancing technologies, using smart technology to move power when it's absolutely, when it's necessary. That sort of traffic cop for the grid is another way of being more efficient with the existing grid. SciTap is a way for us, that's what you just referenced, is an administrative effort, executive branch effort, to put a 2-year shot clock on permitting for transmission on public lands. And that is something that we're very excited about because currently the transmission timeline for permitting is insanely long, unacceptably long. And so if we can speed up the public lands permitting, that too is very important. In terms of financing, we're grateful that Congress, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, et cetera, and the Inflation Reduction Act gave us the ability to do an innovative financing option to partner with those who want to add more power to the grid called the Transmission Facilitation Plan. We have all sorts of tools that we are working on right now to bust this open, and we're encouraged by what we're seeing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see my time's about up.
I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. At this time, I'd like to recognize my dear friend from the state of Washington, Mr. Newhouse, who is the great Hanford Reservation and has worked with me for years, as his predecessor did, on environmental cleanup. Thank you. Mr. Newhouse, you're recognized 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Madam Secretary.
Good morning.
Pleasure to see you today, and thanks for coming to testify on the proposed DOE's 25 budget. Appreciate that very much. I look forward to discussing our national energy challenges as well and the energy issues which impact my district, probably no surprise. First of all, the subject of the Lower Snake River dams I'd like to address. I believe the preservation of the 4 Lower Snake River dams is absolutely critical and important to the state of Washington, in fact, to the entire Pacific Northwest. For years, I've worked to combat what I would call environmental activists as well as dam breaching advocates in their effort to breach the dams. So in December, the administration finalized an agreement called the Columbia River System Operations litigation. The agreement acknowledges that only Congress has the authority to authorize breaching the dams, which I appreciate that recognition. However, the agreement makes commitments to develop energy replacement for the dams, as well as recommending spilling operations. A lot of stakeholders have expressed very serious reservations about this plan. If it comes to fruition, the results will be catastrophic. Adjusting spilling operations could make the dams functionally obsolete and useless. Energy prices will skyrocket. People who depend on the river system will suffer. And I believe the salmon population will be harmed as well. It is, in fact, or a de facto breaching of the dams. So my question, Madam Secretary, are you telling us, are you, through this recommendation, admitting that the administration is recommending policies that represent de facto breaching of the dams in an effort to would essentially circumvent the congressional authority to make that decision?
No. No, I'm definitely not telling you that. I'm not here telling you that at all. Congress is the only place that has the authority to do the breaching of the dams. I think the agreement was a positive step to replenish salmon, to be able to address hatcheries, to work with the tribes on additional power, yes, but that's not to replace. We need enough power there's not enough power to go around, and we need all the power we can get.
I would agree with that statement. We need more, not less power. I'd like to transition into talking about something that we're very proud of in the Northwest is the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. PNNL is a leading hydropower lab conducting innovative research for DOE's Water Power Technology Office. The agency professes a clean energy agenda focused on efficiency, low energy costs, and renewable energy. You, in fact, even have acknowledged that hydropower's role in achieving this. I believe April of last year, you testified before the Senate Committee on Commerce. In response to a question, you said something like, hydropower was a renewable, cheap form of power that should be expanding and not reducing. And I couldn't agree with you more than that. Yet, the agency is proposing a $40 million budget cut to the Water Power Technologies Office for fiscal year '25, which I think would cripple PNNL's hydropower efforts and it seems to me a declaration of war on hydropower. If you could respond to that, I agree we need cheap, low-cost, clean, reliable energy now more than ever before. So why would the agency be proposing this cut?
First of all, let me just say we are in alignment on making sure that we have hydroelectric power in this country, and we want to see expansions. In fact, we just put out a funding opportunity announcement for more hydroelectric power. So, and we'd love to see at some point some additional plus up of those efforts financially. We would love to incentivize additional hydroelectric power across the country. So
So not a war declaration, but just a
absolutely
statement and the reduction?
Not a statement. I think there was some prioritization that had to be done, but believe me, we are very much in favor of dam power and would like to see more of it.
We'll get some clarification as your staff scrambles to get those numbers, and we'll look forward to continuing visiting with you on that. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Newhouse. At this time, I'd like to recognize my friend and colleague, Ms. Lee of Nevada. She's my co-chair, Madam Secretary, for the Nuclear Cleanup Caucus, which is one of the largest caucuses in Congress. So without further ado, Ms. Lee of Nevada, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member Capter, and it's great to see you, Secretary Granholm, today. And just to reiterate, my partnership with the chair and the Nuclear Cleanup Caucus, really happy to hear your commitment to recycling technologies. I think that that's definitely part of the portfolio. And speaking of nuclear waste, I just want to ask you if you can quickly confirm on the record what the department's fiscal year 25 funding request indicates, that DOE will not seek to license or otherwise force a nuclear waste repository in my home state.
I can confirm.
Thank you. Can you briefly update us on the status of DOE's work towards finding an interim storage site using the consent-based method?
Yeah, I know we've talked about this before. We launched an effort and have funded now 12 different consortia across the country, modeling somewhat on what has been done in other nations in a positive end. We're in that first phase of having these conversations, sharing information, et cetera. We'll soon move into a second phase with them, and then a third phase, which would be planning for. But we're not quite at phase 2 yet. We are still proceeding.
Great, thank you. I want to turn now to geothermal energy. Nevada is home to America's first generation geothermal plant. Just this week, your department highlighted just that such an enhanced geothermal systems, or EGS, can unlock clean, reliable, round-the-clock geothermal energy nationwide and affordably power the equivalent of more than 65 million homes by 2015. While I'm pleased to have helped prevent any funding cuts to the DOE's Geothermal Technology Office in fiscal '24, can you briefly highlight how greater resources in fiscal year '25 would better enable DOE to fully realize the immense potential of EGS?
Yeah, I'm so glad you raised this. In fact, just last week, we put out a commercial liftoff report related to enhanced geothermal overall, and it demonstrates how companies can take advantage breaking down some of the barriers. As you referenced, that Fervo, for example, as a geothermal company, has, in partnership with what we have done at the Department of Energy, including the Forge geothermal site, we have seen in the past 2 years a reduction of 50% of the cost of geothermal because of these efforts and new ways to be able to drill. So we are extremely bullish about geothermal. Our goal is to get 90 gigawatts of geothermal. However, your point, if we are able to continue to move on this, there's enough geothermal to power the entire country if we were able to access all that heat beneath our feet. We're very bullish on it. We'd love to see more resources go toward it. It is a hugely important form of clean baseload power, like hydroelectric power is, and we would love to see more support for that too.
Great, thank you. I'm working on legislation on my other committee to break down some of the permitting barriers. As we know, geothermal has some of the same regulatory issues as oil and gas, so hopefully we can unleash that.
The great news is that if the oil and gas industry were to take advantage of their wells that they currently have, they don't have to get new permits. They can simply turn it and use their existing permits to do geothermal on those wells.
Great, great. Well, listen, I want to turn now to oil and gas leases. Of the 22,000 federal oil and gas leases issued in Nevada since 1953, fewer than 100, or 0.3%, have ever produced any energy. However, Nevada is now the second largest producer of geothermal electricity in the U.S., with many, as you said, many of the technologies are the same. So it's fair to say that American energy consumers and taxpayers stand to benefit from federal government focusing more on geothermal and less on fossil fuels in states like mine.
I agree with you 100%, including the workforce that is currently in the oil and gas industry. Same skills required to be able to do geothermal extraction. So yes, appreciate your leadership on this.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, I yield.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. At this time, I'd like to recognize Ms. Letlow of Louisiana. And Ms. Letlow, as you know, your great state is very, very well represented in this Congress. But I can remember vividly and fondly when you came to me about being on this committee, and we could not be more pleased that we made this selection. So with that, Ms. Letlow, I recognize you for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member. And thank you, Madam Secretary, for your testimony, for being here today. I know you know all too well how important liquefied natural gas is to Louisiana, my home state. It's responsible for over 60% of the LNG produced and exported from the United States is from Louisiana. So I'm here to talk to you about that today. I've proudly witnessed the growth of Louisiana's energy industry as my state has emerged as a global energy leader, as well as a top LNG exporter. In 2021 alone, oil and gas contributed over $54 billion throughout our state's economy and accounted for 21% of our gross domestic product. However, I echo the concerns my colleagues have shared surrounding this administration's catastrophic decision to delay consideration of new LNG terminals in the U.S. This administration's decision has hampered Louisiana's growth and potential, directly hurting Louisianans. Furthering these restrictions on growth in our energy sector increasingly strains our markets, eliminates Americans' jobs, and threatens our national security. As you may have heard me say in the past, Americans deserve better. Louisianans deserve better. The administration should embrace the opportunity to turn the page on these short-sighted energy policies and begin to empower all types of energy projects instead of picking losers and winners. It's time to get true energy policy on the table. Madam Secretary, I'd like to ask you about the new studies the department will undertake on LNG exports as part of the pause. You've stated it would take months to conduct new studies, but I'm concerned that it may take much longer. I understand that it took 19 months for the DOE to complete the 2015 macroeconomic study, from DOE's first announcement to its publication in the Federal Register. Do you stand by your statements that this will take a few months? And do I have your commitment that the study will be completed and published in the Federal Register this calendar year?
We are moving with alacrity on this because it is important to get answers to these questions. We are engaging our national labs. It will not take as long as the previous studies have taken. The questions that have to be considered are complicated. Since the last study was done, we were only exporting 4 BCF of LNG, and we are now exporting 14 BCF per day, and with another 12 BCF that is under construction, and another 22 BCF that on top of that that's been authorized. So we have 48 BCF that's already been authorized. And the questions that we have to consider are, if we were exporting the level of authorization, what would that do to prices at home? If we were exporting the level of authorization, or even now, how does that impact our allies? How do we make sure that they have the adequate supplies of energy that they need? So these questions come on both sides. What does it do with respect to the life cycle analysis of these terminals and climate change, communities on the ground? All these questions, we've gotten letters from all sides on this issue. So it's important that we do this right, because this will set up the means for us to evaluate authorizations into the future, as we're required to do under the Natural Gas Act, what is in the public interest.
Are you confident it will happen this calendar year?
I'm confident that it will happen close to this calendar year. I don't want to put a hard date on it, because I don't want to, I want it to be done right.
Okay.
But it will be done soon.
Sure. Many Louisianans are hoping for this calendar year. So let me ask you an additional question about that study. My understanding is the Pacific Northwest Lab will be responsible for updating life cycle analysis of greenhouse gas emissions of projected U.S. LNG exports. However, the 2014 and 2019 reports were conducted by the National Energy Technology Lab, as you mentioned. Is the Pacific Northwest Lab conducting the life cycle analysis for the updated study? And if so, can you explain why National Energy Technology Lab isn't involved when they have carried out the previous 2 studies?
They are involved.
Okay.
In fact, NETL is involved, PNNL is involved, and we may loop in other labs too, depending on the level of complexity of the question. But the National Energy Technology Lab is definitely involved.
Okay. Well, that completes my questioning. I yield back to the chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Letlow. At this time, I'm very thankful that the ranking member of the full committee, who is, I know, been working very hard on the Labor, Education, Health, and Human Services Subcommittee, which I'm privileged to sit on as well, is with us. And Ranking Member Doyle, thank you for taking the time to come to this very important hearing, and I recognize you for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you, and I want to thank Ranking Member Ms. Capter as well, and to say welcome to the Secretary. Thank you so much for your steadfast leadership of the department. We're so grateful for the great work that you do. And I was so pleased to see that the administration is proposing us continue investments in key programs, hydrogen and fuel cell technologies. The Office, the Advanced Research Projects Agency, ARPA-E, as well as other targeted hydrogen initiatives throughout the department. And it's a parochial interest. Connecticut has been named a top 3 state for fuel cell development, home to 2 of the largest fuel cell manufacturers with promising startups. And I know there's a balancing act between the policy that incentivizes newcomers and trying to deal with a level playing field as well. But Treasury is responsible for finalizing the so-called 45V guidance, crucial factor in impacting the future of the domestic hydrogen industry. Some concerns raised that the guidance as proposed may inadvertently create a disincentive to use clean energy to produce hydrogen. We don't want to be in a position where green hydrogen production is more economical overseas, taking, projects, jobs, and manufacturers with them. So this relates to the tax code. I know Treasury's in the driver's seat, but I want to get your perspective on how DOD supporting Treasury to update the rulings and address some of the concerns with the proposal. Can DOE play a larger role to ensure that Treasury understands the potential of their ruling on the growing domestic hydrogen industry?
Thank you, Ranking Member DeLauro. So nice to see you, and thanks for your leadership on this as well. We are very bullish on a clean hydrogen economy. As you know, we have done these hydrogen hubs. We want them to succeed. We have also, in respect to the proposed rule, the comment period is closed now. We've gotten 30,000 comments on that, and so Treasury is it was very specifically asking for comments on these specific issues that you raise and more. They got those comments, and they're now evaluating them. And so we obviously work with Treasury on this. They understand the importance of this, believe me, and I look forward to seeing the rule finalized in a way that ensures we have a clean hydrogen economy.
Yeah, well, it's just so important that there really is the cooperation between the two of you on this issue, because I really think it's so important for the future. And, it's just not for my state, but it's really nationwide. So thank you. Let me move to another area if I can. I really applaud the way in which you've made it a priority to make decarbonization funding available to a number of the industrial sectors. One sector where there is an opportunity is plastic waste. As I understand it, I'm no maven on this issue, but it's an interesting issue. A new way of recycling called biological recycling uses advancements in AI and chemistry, biology to break down all kinds of plastic waste, including textiles, turn it back into new plastic material. The technology seems promising, has potential to cut back on plastic waste, even the most contaminated, complicated plastics, and turn that waste into new materials, all without relying on fossil fuels. Most of the companies doing this today are based in Europe, as I understand it, and in Australia. Again, parochial, I'm proud to say that there's one company in the U.S. that's doing this at scale. It is a company called Protein Evolution. It's based in New Haven, Connecticut. If you haven't seen it, I want you to come see it. Can you speak a bit about the department's approach to plastic recycling? What types of investments and commitments can you make, or DOE can make, to support these new technologies like biological recycling?
Great. Thank you for raising this too. This plastics piece of things is something we need to focus a bit more on. We've got a strategy for plastics innovation, which is under our Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Office. And that strategy identifies 3 or 4 prongs that they're focused on. One is, of course, recycling, including the mechanics of recycling plastics, whether you can have technology do a lot of that work so that it can be done more efficiently. Recycling by design, meaning building recyclable products into the system rather than discarding them. Upcycling, as you referred to, meaning use the plastics to create more high-value products, and then research that's being done on deconstruction of plastics. How do you, whether it's the pathways on thermal deconstruction or on chemical or biological deconstruction. So we have an initiative on this, but it is something that we should work on together to foster, because I think it's an economic opportunity as well for the United States to get their oar in the water and lead on this.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. I'm at the beginning of knowledge about this, and I'm excited about it and would love to work with you on that. And I have visited this company in New Haven, and again, I welcome you to come, to see this, and as well as what we're doing in fuel cell and hydrogen technology. But it just seems that these are new avenues and efforts for us at this time with this and this technology to be able to grasp these efforts, deal with, the resources or what's necessary in order to pursue them. So again, looking forward to being able to work together with you on that. I am going to dash back to Labor HHS, where I am the ranking member. But thank you so much for being here. And thank you for taking advantage of all of the opportunities for moving forward, of, seizing the moment in terms of what are the new technologies and how we can use that to our advantage here. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member.
Thank you, Mr. Lauro. At this time, I'd like to recognize my friend from the great state of New York, Mr. Morelli, for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and Ms. Capter, and certainly to you, Madam Secretary, for your service and for being here today. I wanted to start by talking a little bit about NNSA and the mission of the Stockpile Stewardship Program, which each day is increasing in importance and complexity. I'm very pleased the Department of Energy and NNSA, it's quite a mouthful, have committed to funding necessary sustainment at the premier ICF and high energy density science facilities, Lawrence Livermore, Sandia, and the University of Rochester's LLE, which is I'm proud to have in my district. In addition to sustainment, though, it's critical we have a plan for longer-term innovation to meet our stockpile stewardship needs. I wonder if you could just briefly describe sort of what your vision is, or your strategy to work with the scientific community at the labs and at research universities to make sure that we have the right stuff in terms of experimental facilities and workforce development to meet the sort of modernization needs.
Yeah, we have the most amazing tools in the world to ensure that our stockpile is safe, secure, and effective, that we are doing life extension work in the most efficient way possible and responsive to the Department of Defense's needs. I'm pleased to say that we have delivered 200 warheads this year. It's been an incredibly effective period of time for NNSA, and really proud of the work that they are doing using both the tools that we have and even as they are building all of these facilities to ensure that we continually upgrade. So we will continue apace.
Terrific. Thank you. I did want to talk, too, about NIF regarding fusion. NIF is now regularly able to reach ignition. Just recently achieved a target gain greater than 2, which is vitally important. And I'm also proud, as I said, about University of Rochester's LLE and the role it plays in the national program to advancing the science of fusion. I know NIF uses lasers for fusion, as does the LLE. Others use, and there's others use large magnetic systems, but they all share common technological challenges, including power extraction, first wall materials, tritium handling that must be overcome to get to the day where we develop a plant and ultimately realize fusion in terms of commercial use. In your mind, how high a priority is getting to that commercial fusion energy for the department, and could you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks so much for your leadership in this as well. It's very exciting. First, actually, NIF has now achieved over 5 megajoules outputs, so it's really a great, they continue to see an increase in power out. Our budget request has $844 million for fusion energy science, and we're excited about that, including funding the Milestone effort, which of course is in partnership with commercial fusion developers. We've also contributed as well to ITER this year as also. But all of this is in furtherance of the President's bold decadal vision for commercial fusion within a decade. And our offices, both on the NNSA side as well as on the civil side, are eager to continue to push in this regard. And we're lucky that we've got amazing examples at NIF and amazing partnerships in the private sector to make this happen.
Well, thank you. I'm grateful for that.
As well as the University of Rochester.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning them. They'll be happy to hear that. I want to go from the really big picture to sort of the last mile, and following up on Mr. Quigley's question related to deployment of clean energy and the need on transmission and distribution. Just to share a story, in my home district, we have had a number of projects, housing projects, new manufacturers that have really struggled to get access to the grid, not in terms of generation. We seem to have adequate generation, but transformers, which I'm told take 3 to 4 years to build and install. And it seems to me, in any system, if you have a bottleneck, really limits your ability to grow. So from an economic point of view, it's really been a challenge, and we've been surprised at the number of projects that have been held up. I wonder if you've given any thought to ways the department might accelerate the development of transformers, new industrial facilities to build and construct. And I know they're all customized, but if you just could say a word, and I apologize, Mr. Chair, if we could allow her to answer, and I exceeded my time. I apologize for that.
Quite all right.
Okay.
I'll yield.
I'll be quick. We absolutely have given thought to this, have met with industry and all sorts of stakeholders to identify what the roadblocks are. There are 3 main drivers of the supply chain issues. One is labor availability and training. One is materials, which is access to GOES, as Ms. Kaptur was referring to, and the other is manufacturing capacity. However, we now have started to see manufacturers expand in the United States to meet that demand. Eaton, a GE affiliate, Siemens have all announced that they are expanding, whether it's distribution transformers or big power transformers. So we're encouraged by that, but more needs to be done clearly, and one would think that the demand out there would create the opportunity for more supply, and we're working with them on that.
Well, I'd love to work with you, Madam Secretary, and you, Mr. Chairman, any way that we can help assist in increasing that output. It would really be a big additional, I think, for our economic as well as our energy needs. So I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Morelli. Appreciate your line of questioning. At this point, I'm going to begin a second round of questions, Madam Secretary. I'm going to begin with my strong support of isotopes. I would like to better understand the department's funding approach for the Office of Science Isotopes Research and Development and Production Program. To put it simply, isotopes, in my view, should not become a high priority only during supplemental requests. While I appreciate the fiscal year 2025 budget request includes nominal increases for facilities construction and production research, so much more, in my view, can be done. Madam Secretary, between building new facilities and providing new resources for current producers, what do you believe is the right balance that will help us more quickly meet demand and create supply chain independence? And my second question in this regard is, how will the department ensure isotopes production research results are shared with our allies while also protecting this research from falling into the hands of other foreign suppliers? And I thank you.
Great, thank you so much. As you know, the isotope R&D and production program in 2025 is $183 million, which is a 41% increase from the 24 enacted. The SIPR-C in Oak Ridge, the Stable Isotope Production and Research Center, is one of the department's top priorities. I know it's a top priority of yours as well. That too got an increase, a 56% increase, and our priority is to complete that facility as soon as possible. Argon National Lab also has an isotopes research component, which we are funding as well. We strongly believe that isotope production in the United States is critical for our national security, and certainly for the health benefits of us being able to use those isotopes for cancer cures, et cetera. So I agree with you on this and look forward to continuing to work to support the isotope production in the U.S.
Thank you. I'd like to address the issue of nuclear energy. Of course, in my opening statement, I talked about this is my priority and my avocation, my number one issue in Congress, and has been for quite some time. Madam Secretary, nuclear energy is carbon-free and can be deployed on a large scale to supply the United States, the world, with clean, reliable electricity. Yet, again, in fiscal '25, the budget cuts nuclear energy this time by nearly 6%. The largest cuts are to the two ongoing advanced reactor demonstration projects and the National Reactor Innovation Center. But almost every program in the Office of Nuclear Energy is reduced. If you could kindly explain the reasoning for such a large reduction, especially considering the increases to energy efficiency and renewable energy activities. I thank you.
Thank you so much for giving me a chance to clarify. The funding for the advanced reactor demonstration program simply was moved to the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, where the big demonstration projects are. It's not a reduction in the effort on that. And the other reduction, as I know you're aware, was to the Clean Power, Carbon-Free Power Project. And so that obviously went by the wayside, and we've rightfully done some good work with what was left of that and repurposed some of that for SMRs. Thank you so much for your leadership on that.
Thank you. I'm going to be a little bit parochial now. Back to the Oak Ridge Reservation on the lithium processing facility. Madam Secretary, the fiscal '25 budget justification identifies a delay of 2 years in completing construction of the lithium processing facility, which of course, as you know, is kind of part and parcel, though it's separate to the UPF, and a $700 million cost increase. It also discusses an ongoing reevaluation of the project to determine cost savings options and if they exist. To what extent has NNSA determined the impacts to this program of record from the delay in completing this facility? I thank you.
No impacts to the program of record are expected from the delay from the planned schedule. So we're good for that. I think we're asking for $260 million in FY25 for the LPF. So can I just make one clarification?
Yes, please.
I said that we repurposed funding from the Carbon-Free Power Project for SMRs. That's not true. We repurposed money from the Civil Nuclear Credit, and I didn't want to make a misstatement on the record.
Thank you, and I appreciate that clarification. At this time, I'm going to yield to the round two to Ranking Member Kaptur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for your endurance this morning, and to all of our members. We had a great turnout today, Mr. Chair. Credit to your leadership. And I just wanted to move to page, let's see, 2 of your testimony, where you reference the work of the department, $1.6 billion to support the clean energy workforce and infrastructure projects, including $385 million for weatherizing and retrofitting homes of low-income Americans. I can't make you do anything, Madam Secretary, but I would strongly urge the department to consider an interagency effort to address the housing shortage more effectively by working together, perhaps, in teams in certain areas to test the following. If you look at the funding you have, if you look at the funding that HUD has for housing, the Community Action Program that comes out of the, not this subcommittee, but another subcommittee, and also rural housing at the Department of Agriculture, and create a little working group in cooperation with outside groups like Habitat for Humanity. I think we would be very surprised to see how much more effective that kind of interagency, intergroup effort might work and set some models up for the country to have even more impact with the funding. $385 million is not insignificant, but it isn't enough to meet the huge demand of the country, and with the Department of Labor for workforce development, because one of the problems of housing deterioration in low-income communities is there aren't the skills to build. And so there are many creative things that can be done. You don't have to provide a long answer to this, but I'm just encouraging you to look cross-agency to make the maximum use of the dollars you have. And with the incentives we have in the energy bill to create off-site power feeds into neighborhoods, you could actually create models around the country of how to reduce energy bills, right, for an entire neighborhood, not just a house. So I'm urging you to think creatively, and I know you have the capacity to do this and your staff does, but I just wanted to mention that as we proceed in this hearing.
I look forward to, I mean, you're always so creative and always thinking big picture, and totally appreciate that. I mean, we do work, for example, with the Department of Labor on doing workforce development on battery, for example, battery workforce development initiative. But your point about working more closely in a holistic way on all of these things for low-income folks is a really great point, and point taken.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. I wanted to also say, based on a situation you're well aware of, I have had the burden of representing the most corrupt nuclear commercial plant in the history of the country. And we're just lucky we're still sitting around the table here. I really would urge you to create a standard of excellence somehow in the department. If everything fails in terms of corporate leadership, that somehow a standard of excellence is something the department is able to promote for the highly trained workforce that I can guarantee you in my area saved our necks. And if in fact any other commercial nuclear carrier descends to criminality, that there be something in the department. It's not, you're not the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, you're not FERC, they failed us. But maybe there's something the Department of Energy could do to take what we know from the nuclear Navy and create a standard of excellence to mitigate against failure. Because in fact, it was the workers that saved us more than once. But something is missing. Something is missing. You say, well, don't regulate the commercial carriers. Wrong. Create a standard of excellence that is fail-safe. I don't know quite how to do that. I'm not the Secretary of Energy, but I know that it was the workers. It was the plumbers and pipe fitters, the boiler makers, and the electricians that saved our necks. How do we respect them? How do we create a nuclear Navy standard of excellence in the workforce, despite what management might be doing? I think some set of people in your department should be thinking about this and look at the former Davis-Besse plant as the worst, not the workforce, the management. They failed us time and time again. And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission arrived always too late and $1 short. FERC didn't pay any attention, and there we sit. So, and the commercial industry knew it was the worst plant in their brotherhood. They did nothing. They knew it, and they did nothing. So I'm just saying, I think there's something else that can happen. I would urge your department, now that we have new management that has taken over to dig us out of this hole, I think you could really do something there that would be transformational for the future.
And in fact, you all provided the means for us to do nuclear safety training, and this is something that we can embed into training that next generation of nuclear workforce. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you for seeing this. I think I'm over time, but hopefully we'll go to another round. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
At this time, thank you, Ms. Capter. This time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Newhouse of Washington for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I found the answer.
Oh, okay. So a couple things I wanted to, hopefully we can get through this really quickly in 5 minutes. We both have time to say what we need to.
Yep.
Hanford, I want to talk about that just a little bit. You know, I've always been and will continue to advocate for adequate cleanup funding for Hanford. Certainly, it's the largest environmental cleanup site in the country. And we've got a lot of accomplishments that we can point to. The heating up of the first large melter, and now the second. We're making great progress there. And as you know, funding's got to continue to grow as the vitrification process moves forward. But with that said, I know there's also cleanup projects around the country, other cleanup projects. So in light of that, within the context of the Energy Department's budget proposal, and I noticed that there's a decrease in the overall EM budget, which is slightly concerning. How does DOE plan to ensure that there's going to be enough funding to go around as we move forward?
Well, this is something we want to continue to work, obviously, with Congress on. I note that at Hanford, there still is a significant budget there, $3 billion, but we also recognize some projects move off, and so there may be decreases in the EM budget related to that, but Hanford is just such a big priority. And thank you for your leadership, and I look forward to working to make sure that EM, you're going to be going to the cleanup caucus tonight, EM is supported all the way through.
So on that Hanford site, the agency announced the Clean Up to Clean Energy initiative, which is great. To utilize underutilized properties. You also announced the issuance of requests for qualifications offering 18,000 acres for development, which is all good stuff. But the Tri-Cities area has expressed, the community has expressed some concerns about the trajectory of this initiative, alleging that DOE has been unwilling to transfer land back to the community and has been favoring short-term solar projects that disincentivize investors who are looking for longer-term investments in things such as nuclear or hydrogen development. So I'm hopeful that the agency will listen to the concerns of the community and take their concerns into consideration. And could you give me some assurances that Department of Energy will work with the Tri-City community to incorporate their requests and their concerns into these land use decisions and truly fairly assess all clean energy applications related to this initiative, make sure they're considered equally?
Absolutely. I hadn't heard that there were concerns about it, but we obviously have to work hand in glove with the Tri-Cities area. I know that Ike White, the head of environmental management, is there all the time, and our team is there listening and working, and to the extent that we need to follow up with you on that, we're eager to do that.
Appreciate that. And then, I'm sorry, going real fast here, but also concerning Hanford, is the Office of River Protection. It's expected to sunset soon and will combine with the Richland Operations Office. So as you know, the Office of River Protection was created to ensure that Hanford's tank waste operations got adequate, appropriate attention. How can we make sure that that attention will continue and that their work will not be ignored as we move forward with both offices getting the equal attention they deserve?
Yeah, it is just a top priority. We cannot allow that part of the mission to be subsumed in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, it affects the region outside of just Hanford. It's very, very critical. So it will not be subsumed. It will not be deprioritized.
Great, great. I can tell you, you've educated yourself a lot in the last 3 years. I appreciate that very much on Hanford. And then if I could just return real quickly to the Lower Snake River dams. You stated that you're not advocating breaching, even in a de facto manner. So could I ask you to reconcile that statement with what seems to be very clear from the administration, that the plan is in fact breaching the dams?
I mean, the agreement itself is a 10-year stop on considering anything like that, right? It's basically holds in place while we build up the capability for salmon, for fishery, for hatcheries, and for the tribes to develop their own additional power. That's what I can tell you. That's what's in the agreement, and we need power. And I know there's a study that's embedded with this, so there's no de facto or subterfuge here. It's an agreement that gets us a 10-year ability to evaluate.
Well, again, from your last response earlier, I would agree with you 100% that we need to add power capability, not take away. So thank you very much, Madam Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I thank you, Mr. Newhouse. At this time, I recognize your colleague and our colleague from the great state of Washington, Mr. Kilmer, for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Madam Secretary, for being with us. And thanks for visiting my district a few years back to the Pacific Northwest National Lab in Sequim, Washington. You are the first, I think, not just Department of Energy Secretary, but I think Cabinet Secretary to visit Sequim, Washington. While there, you got to see the department's only marine and coastal research lab, which really important to our local economy, really important to the community. As you may remember from the Business and Tribal Roundtable we did, very supported by the community, and appreciated the conversation about some of the lab's unique capabilities and the importance it brings to developing marine energy. That support some of DOE's water power priorities for a decarbonized energy system. Also want to discuss the role of collaboration across DOE with other agencies to leverage our Oceans for Clean Energy. Congressman Newhouse and I just reintroduced a bill called the Blue Ocean Energy Innovation Act, which would supercharge some of the work that's happening at PNNL and the SQUIM lab to develop blue energy to help provide clean power to coastal communities, to drive some economic development in those areas, and to create good jobs. And our hope here is that it will advance some of the DOE's ongoing work to develop a cross-cutting program for aquatic decarbonization. So I guess my first question is, how's that going?
Well, we're supportive of what you guys have introduced, and we're supportive, obviously, of the Water Power Technologies Office. And this answers the question that you had as well, which is the reduction in funding for hydropower demonstration in irrigation modernization, low-impact hydropower, and hybrids. Because 2024 funded these activities, and we just got that. We didn't need an additional amount in 2025. The demonstrations that are underway are going to inform the future pathways. And then there was a cut for the marine energy infrastructure at the Coastal Laboratory and PacWaves. PacWave is expected to complete in the summer of 2024, their construction. And again, some of that was one-time funding. So I just want you to know this is not a statement of deprioritizing our commitment to water power overall, and excited to work with you in whatever ways to be able to ensure that we can get that clean, baseload, safe power.
Do you want to share any thoughts about the agency's work in terms of cross-cutting programs for aquatic decarbonization?
Well, I do know that there's, we want to work with your team on it. Let's see. I know that we did. Oh, right, you guys, we provided a briefing recently to your office, and I know we are going to be getting back to you shortly on some of the questions that you were asking. We are, eager to focus on this, and we're eager to work with you on it, and we appreciate your leadership and your support in the area. And let's see if we can make some momentum here.
With the time I have left, I know everybody is eager to do what we can to reduce energy costs. How can Congress and DOE work together to support programs like weatherization assistance to ensure folks can afford to heat and cool their homes? And one thing we've heard back home is just ongoing challenges recruiting workers to fill some of these jobs. Is that something you're facing? And are there plans to help? And do you need anything from Congress to remove some of those potential barriers so that when we provide funding for weatherization assistance, that the projects can happen?
Yeah, we are focused on working on weatherization and training on the local levels as we fund the community action agencies in the states. We really appreciate the money that came to the department to really plus up weatherization from the bipartisan infrastructure law, which gives us the ability to fund an additional 500,000 weatherization. We're asking for more. Another 40,000, to do another 40,000, because there are 33 million homes in America that would qualify. Some of the barriers that we are seeing are we need to make sure that homes are weatherization ready, and that means having to make sure they've got the structural capacity to take on the infrastructure necessary, the insulation, et cetera. And so we've carved out a piece of weatherization funding to be able to support that. More is needed to be able to do that as well. But so with the Department of Labor and ourselves, we were really focused on the training associated with doing those weatherization projects on the ground in community across the country. But the need is great, and the resources don't cover the full need.
Thank you again, and we'd love to invite you back to Washington to see, as IRA and the infrastructure law dollars get released. There's some good stuff happening in our region. We'd love to invite you.
Yep, I agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Kilmer. At this time, I'd like to recognize my friend, Ms. Washman Schultz of Florida. And Ms. Washman Schultz, thank you for coming back. I know there's a lot of committees and subcommittees meeting today, so thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to hop back next door to resume my ranking member role on the west border of the city of Miramar, which is in Broward County, a city in my district whose population is 50% African American, and this burn facility is less than 8/10 of a mile from a very large residential community. These burn facilities have been known to emit pollutants that cause cancer, respiratory problems, and reproductive health risks, potentially exposing hundreds of families in Miramar. And we've seen, decades later, long before we had the technology to actually know what the dangers of these kinds of facilities were, the cleanup necessary, and the cancer clusters, and all of the lead poisoning, and all of the things that that too many families go through when they are near facilities like this. And that's just one of the many burdens that minority communities face every single day, exacerbated by climate change. Climate change worsens air quality, and it can be disproportionately affect communities near industrial sites or highways where low-income and minority populations more likely reside. You have scorching temperatures that we see now from climate change that can exacerbate health issues, heat-related illnesses, and those disproportionately affect vulnerable communities. So can you talk about this new extreme heat program that President Biden proposed, and how will our local communities benefit from it? Long preamble, short question.
Really important, really important. And there are other ways than I assume these burn facilities relate to municipal solid waste.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are other ways to deal with, including, sustainable aviation fuel, et cetera, to deal with municipal solid waste. However, but the extreme heat proposal, $70 million of that will go through our Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, and really it's going to be focused on solutions that are community-driven. So $70 million is there, and $30 million is with our state and community energy programs to be able to build a solution with community about what works, borrowing from best practices. For example, it might be district cooling. It might be community adaptation to reduced heat islands, et cetera, resilience approaches, greening the area. I mean, there's all sorts of ways that other nations and other cities have taken this on. So we're excited to be able to do that, especially as climate change progresses and things get hotter and hotter.
Thank you. I also wanted to ask, in early January, Senator Ernst and I revisited Israel and the region post-October 7th, and our sole focus was galvanizing a multinational effort to secure the release of all of the hostages. And I'll be continuing our work by leading a delegation of women members to Israel at the end of this month, and in just a few days, to ensure that more members of Congress understand what Israel is facing in her hour of need. So President Biden has shown time and time again, both through his actions and in his budget requests, that he stands firmly with Israel and our relationship. One program in your department is funding for the U.S.-Israel Energy Cooperative Agreement, and that funding facilitates joint research and development efforts in the fields of alternative power and energy efficiency. It's a pivotal program that provides grants to U.S. and Israeli small businesses and academic institutions that enable them to develop alternative energy, renewable energy, and energy efficiency technologies. Can you explain the importance of this program and some funding success stories from it?
Yeah, and particularly through the Binational Industrial Research and Development Foundation, BIRD, which has, we have a $2 million request in the budget. It's a partnership between the University of Tel Aviv and University of Maryland to be able to put forward clean energy technologies in partnership with businesses, offering micro grants to businesses and collaboration between our two countries. And then there's the U.S.-Israel Energy Center, which is a $4 million request that we have in the budget, again, to create consortia that work together on some of the most difficult energy solutions. Israel, as startup nation, et cetera, has got a lot of technology that they can share, water technologies, et cetera, how battery technology. I mean, Israel has been very advanced in their research and development, as have we. And so to be able to share common areas of research is what we've been doing, and we appreciate Congress's support, your leadership in making sure that partnership exists.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the synergies of the expertise in our two countries is so important to continue to perpetuate, and I'm hopeful that we can seriously consider the President's budget proposals in this area. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you.
Ms. Washman-Schultz, again, I strongly thank you for your strong support of Israel and with this endeavor, and thank you for leading an all-female delegation over to Israel at a time like this. Really appreciate that. At this time, I think I am going to, in the interest of time, I forgot my good friend from New York. My apologies. I'm going to recognize Mr. Morelli of New York for 5 minutes.
No apologies necessary, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your leadership. I wanted to, Madam Secretary, appreciate your comments on hydrogen. And although Rochester, New York was not selected for the Regional Clean Hydrogen Hub, and I'll insert my sad face here, nonetheless, really grateful for your leadership in the space. And in fact, thank you. Department of Energy was kind enough to announce 2 companies in my district, Plug and Ionomer, would be receiving $86 million in capacity grants for their work in electrolyzers and other ways of expanding capacity. So it brings up an interesting question, and I think you mentioned it briefly, but just would be curious as to your thoughts on the state of workforce in the hydrogen sector and what, if we need to do more, and I suspect we do, more about workforce development in the hydrogen sector and what thoughts you have about that.
Yeah, I mean, part of, thank you for the question, because it is an important issue. It's a new industry that we are creating, so we need new skill sets. Although a lot of skills that traditional oil and gas, electrical workers have can easily be translated. Each of the hydrogen hubs, for example, require a community benefits plan where they describe how they are going to be training the local workforce to be able to take on the skills associated with these hubs. These hubs are complex. There are a lot of off-takers that have one type of industry. There's producers, electrolyzers. There's all sorts of skills that are required. And so the community benefits plan require a comprehensive pathway for workers in partnership with local community colleges, local universities, et cetera. That building up of that workforce is absolutely critical if these hydrogen hubs are going to be successful, and that's where we're really focused on it in the community benefits plans, which are required as part of the hubs.
Very good. Thank you. Just to shift gears for a moment, I want to take a moment to highlight the work of the Loan Programs Office in your department. Over the past year, I've had the opportunity to work closely with Director Shaw. Greatly appreciate that he has consistently made himself and his whole team available to my office. Under his leadership, the LPO has seen enormous growth. I know you know this. The end of 2023, I think they had over 202 applications totaling over $214 billion in requested loans for renewable energy, advanced nuclear, hydrogen, and critical minerals projects. And we've seen those investments in our region, in Rochester, which I'm grateful for and continue to work with his team. But I wonder if you have any thoughts on how to catalyze additional private sector investment into these critical projects and how you work with the private sector to make those investments a reality.
Yeah, the Loan Programs Office is extremely effective, and doing outreach particularly, we need to make sure that there is match when there is a loan or a financial partner when there's a loan. And so the outreach that they've done to those, to banking and financial institutions, private sector investors, et cetera, has been really critical. The reputation of the Loan Program Office under Director Shaw has been stellar. They've had, people know that when you go into the Loan Program Office, you have to go through a series of steps in order to be vetted and to ensure you've got not just the right technology, but the right business plan. But when they come out on the other side, it is a stamp of approval for the companies that are able to get it. we have a lot of loan capacity that is still left. And the favorable rates that the Loan Program Office offers ensures that there is a huge amount of companies knocking at the door. So we're excited by the interest that we are seeing, and we are going to continue to do that outreach to the private sector to make sure the Loan Program Office is fully taken advantage of.
And I would, just in my closing seconds, just thank you again for the program. I think the interesting thing about it is, when you're doing innovative projects, and I know it involves government money, but it's not always possible to know with certainty how this is going to work. There's a degree of risk, and if we're going to really invest in innovation, we're going to have to be aware of that risk and be able to tell taxpayers that they're going to share some of that risk. But one of the great things about the program, which I just want to note, is it's really investing in technologies. So even if companies struggle, and we've seen challenges by some companies, it's really important that we continue to invest in the technologies that'll improve innovation and allow us to meet all the pretty extensive and expansive goals that we have for this country. So just want to thank you again for your leadership and look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you.
And I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morelli. Madam Secretary, in the interest of time, I'm going to be yielding to the ranking member for a few more questions, but I do want to reaffirm our strong commitment to fusion. I know yours as well. We spoke together at the White House years ago, I think probably about 3 years ago, and it has really grown. I can't go a day without having a new fusion company come to see me. They're excited about our mutual bipartisan and bicameral support and administration support for fusion. So I thank you for that endeavor, and I think that will certainly continue. With that, I'm going to yield to the ranking member, Ms. Kaptur.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and also just to say that this is the way Congress should work, along with the executive branch. And Mr. Chairman, I just hope a lot of Americans see this on a bipartisan basis, a committee where members came from every region of the country expressing their concerns, expressing their interests, and to have very intelligent, interested citizens in the audience today. We probably won't get a lot of publicity, but this is America's system of government at work. And Madam
Yes.
Secretary, we thank you so very, very much. This is the way it should work. I just wanted to mention a few issues. One, in terms of the changing nature of the energy sector, one of the segments of our society, I think, that has been somewhat wounded is the Boilermakers Union. And I would urge the proper people at the Department of Energy to sit down with their national and regional leadership. These are highly skilled people, but with the change in the coal industry, for example, they've lost a great deal of their jobs. And I truly believe that these individuals are precious to our country, and there can be other segments of the energy industry that they can transition into. I would urge your attention to this segment. And Ohio is one of the impacted states, and I know there are others. Number two, again, I would urge you to work with Secretary Vilsack in every way that you can to look at energy in both your departments and what this means for the future. In my home counties, and I have 7 that are rural, 40% of the crop goes to ethanol and biodiesel, and the Department of Energy, sort of against its own initial reaction, has been drawn into energy in a way that they never imagined initially. I think there needs to be closer cooperation with the Department of Energy to maximize their achievements there. Thirdly, I wanted to ask your help with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And parts of the country that are struggling to recover from job outsourcing that has impacted us for many decades. I would urge your department to ensure that communities that have been impacted, both large and small, are able to use the resources of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, engaging them in a way that they can see what's happening in other parts of the country that may have benefited already, how people put projects together, what they're using those funds for. I think that that kind of sharing could be very, very important. And the lower down a region falls in terms of median income, the harder it is for them to access the federal programs that are there. So I wanted to put that on the record. And finally, Madam Secretary, I just thought it would be interesting to hear from you, and I'm sure you've had 1,000 such experiences, but in your experience as Secretary, and you've been such an effective voice for the energy sector, what are 1 or 2 experiences you've had where you saw something you said, I've seen the future? I know I've seen the future, and that you've been a part of helping to create it. Could you give us just one or two examples of something that's happened in your position now that it was, it was awesome? Something happened and you knew you were part of building the future. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that question, and again, it's not me, it's the team, is the fact that we achieved fusion. I mean, that was obviously the future, the National Ignition Facility, and if we can commercialize that, it is just, Katie bar the door in terms of our ability to power our nation. So huge, so important. I appreciate what you're saying about communities on the ground, especially smaller communities that may not have the means to apply for DOE grants, et cetera. It's why we have beefed up our state and community energy program to offer that technical assistance to communities on the ground. I mean, one of the good pieces of news is that the Inflation Reduction Act does a little bit of that work for us, because if you put a project in a disadvantaged community, in a rural community, in a community that is poor, you get an additional tax credit. And so we're seeing a lot of investment going to communities that you might not suspect because of the way the tax structure, thank you very much for voting on that, is. And so a lot of that work being done, I think, is addressing. But the grant side of things, to your point, is very important, and that's why we've built up this ability through the state and community energy program, where, as you would say, DOE meets the street.
Thank you very much. And again, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your leadership and the great turnout at our subcommittee this morning, and for your bipartisan spirit.
I thank the ranking member for her kind comments and great questions, and for the great cooperation from both sides. With that, I would again like to thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here today before us. And with that, the subcommittee stands adjourned.